Today, the title of this is called Sorting the Mail. We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 10. I have a lot of experience in my history as a marketing guy doing direct mail. The first 8 or 10 years that I was doing, maybe more than that, maybe 10 or 12 years, I was doing direct mail. And there's two things you have to do when you're going to send direct mail. And by the way, it's still a great way to market yourself. But there's two things you have to do, and most people don't understand the first thing. If you can't get the first thing right, you can't get the second thing right. And this is almost like its own parable to the purpose of our life and the purpose of Jesus coming to this earth for our sake. And it all actually ties together really, really well. And so that's what I'm going to do for you today in Matthew 10. So when you send direct mail, what you have to do, there's two things you have to do. Number one, you have to get them to open the mail piece. So the very most important thing is you must get it open, because we know everyone gathers their mail the same way. You go and you get everything out of the mailbox, and then you create two piles. You create the pile of stuff that you're going to throw away immediately without even opening it, and then you have a pile of the stuff that you're going to open. Now, everyone knows that sometimes there's something that you're not sure about. You go ahead and stick it in the open pile. You know what? That could be a check. That could be something important. It says important, and you throw it over there. A lot of times those are just good marketing pieces. But the point is, you're going to divide into two, and you're going to open the stuff. Now, just because you open it doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to be anything good in there. But you get put in the open pile, because if you get put in the throwaway pile, you're for sure done. And most people who send direct mail, their stuff goes in the throwaway pile, and they're for sure done immediately. So if you want to be good at direct mail, you have to get opened, which means you have to know how to send a piece that's going to cause someone to think that it's something that they should open, first of all. Then inside of it, you have to have something compelling. You have to have something compelling. You got to have some sort of offer, some sort of value that you're willing to deliver to them that they feel is so valuable that they're going to call you, or they're going to save what you sent them. They're going to set it in a place, in a drawer, or someplace where they would know to go look for it, so that whenever they have the need for whatever it is that you're offering, they'll go get it and call you. Because if your offer is that good, they're going to say, you know what, I want to take him up on that, but I'm not quite ready yet. So if you're doing a good job with direct mail, you'll get a lot of calls down the road. So let's look at how this works with regard to God and Jesus in particular. This is a Jesus Answers hashtag today. So we're going to be quoting Jesus. He's speaking to the disciples, Matthew 10:34. He's just been speaking to thousands of people. Okay, so he's just been teaching thousands. Now imagine teaching thousands with no megaphone. Okay, it's got to be a draining situation. We also know that over 90% of the people that Jesus was teaching were illiterate. This is part of the reason why he used parables and tried to make things very simple. And what we see as a theme over and over and over again in the New Testament is when Jesus is teaching the masses, he sort of has a watered down, kind of more of a mass message type situation. Typically afterwards, he will pull the disciples aside, and then he will give them a much more rigorous message, a much more serious message, and a much more detailed message. He'll explain it a little bit more to them. And this makes sense. I mean, if you were the coach of your son or daughter's baseball or softball team or whatever, you would teach the whole group something, but then you would probably pull your child to the side and give them a little bit more specifics, right? Because he expected more from the disciples than he did from the average person out there, just like we would probably expect more from our son or daughter if we were coaching them. And he expected more from them. And this is some of the most interesting and some people would say surprising and even shocking things that Jesus said in the New Testament. So Matthew 10:34, let's get there, and then I'll explain to how it connects with mail, and then the application for us. So Matthew 10:34, Jesus says to the disciples, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." Whoa, wait a minute. The Prince of Peace? You did not come to bring peace? I don't get it. See, the disciples had misconceptions about Jesus and why he'd come. And as many times as he would tell them, a lot of times they would stray from that. They would not understand it. And so here he's being very straightforward to them. Listen, I did not come here to bring peace. I came here with a sword. As he continues, verse 35, "For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." Verse 36, and a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. So what is he saying here? He's saying that he came to sort the mail. The reason that Jesus came, the reason that God wrapped himself in flesh and came to the earth, was to sort the mail. He didn't come to unify everyone. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to sort the stuff that needs to go in the trash and the stuff that needs to go into the open pile. Jesus came to bring a sword, to divide, to find out who's in and who's out. That was the reason that he came. And he made it very clear here to the disciples, and he was scathing to them. And it was a harsh message for them to receive. But he was a little bit harder than them. He was very specific. Notice verse 39, he says, whoever finds his life will lose it. It means if you find some life here that makes up what you are and who you are here on earth, you're going to lose it, as far as I'm concerned. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. All of the disciples did so, except John, who died in exile, which you could say he lost his life for that. He died a lonely death, at least. Let's put it that way. So what he's saying here is that I came to breathe the truth. If you have ever breathed the truth into a situation or into a room of people, or maybe as a board meeting or something, there's 12 of you there, and you have some sort of truth bomb you have to drop, you're going to divide that place. People don't just accept the truth. It just doesn't work that way. And especially when we're talking about an eternal truth, when we're talking about the truth of God and the purpose of life, he knew that it was going to cause division. And that's what he told the disciples. I did not come here to bring peace and bring everyone together. That's not what I came here to do. I came here to sort the mail. I came here to sort the mail. And what's really interesting, and you can go into, if you actually look, and I'll pull this up. Romans 1:17 is where we can hear from the Apostle Paul, and what Paul does is he basically defines, how you get into the keeper pile. But I'll give you the short version while I'm pulling this up here. Romans 1:17 is a powerful, actually 1:16 and 17 is super, super powerful. I read this a couple weeks ago, I think. But basically what happens is this. If you believe, so everyone, as Paul says here in Romans 1:16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation for everyone who believes. So everyone who believes has access. Everyone who believes goes into the open pile. So Jesus is getting the mail of our souls. He's setting people who believe in the open pile because they need further investigation. They actually require judgment. These people who don't believe, that's easy. Over here. That's what he came. That's what he's telling us in Matthew 10:34. But then Paul says in Romans 1:17, for in it, and he's speaking of the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. So what he's saying there is that if you have faith, so when he opens the mail, he's going to look into your heart. He's going to look at your works. He's going to look into you. By believing, you get yourself into the open pile. By having faith, you can survive the investigation of your soul, right? The reality behind not just your works, but what's in your heart. Because as Paul also mentions in Romans multiple times, as Romans is a great book about the righteousness of God, he's telling you that it's not about your works. It's not about what you do. It's not about what you say. It's about what's in your heart. That is what is going to be judged. And so when he looks in your heart, what's there? That's ultimately what we need to protect, what we need to look out for. So it's not about just saying, well, no, I believe, or just going through the motions of going to church every week. It's about what is in your heart. And that's why faith is so important, because faith is something that can only come from your heart. You can't say you have faith. If you have faith, you will act a different way. You will have trust in God. You will just allow God to do his thing, and you won't necessarily need to try to overly control a situation. You can just put it in God's hands. You know what? It's in God's hands. And that's it. That's faith. So what Jesus is saying here is that the purpose, and then he comes off a little serious here. The purpose for him being here is to divide. The purpose for him being here is to sort. Who should we look at more closely? Who do we not even need to look at any further? And he just explained to them, that he is the only way, right? Because he's basically saying who does not believe in me is not worthy of me. He who puts his mother or father or son above me is not worthy of me. He's saying I'm the only way. And so he makes that very clear. He's also told the disciples his purpose and their purpose and everyone else's purpose. Our purpose is to make it through that opening of the mail. That's our purpose in life, is to make it through there. And all we need to do in order to do that is first believe. It takes belief to build faith. So you believe first, and then you build your faith from there. And if you can build your faith, that's it. It'll show up in your heart. It'll show up in every single thing that you do. So the purpose of our life here on earth is essentially so that God can make a final judgment on our soul. And I won't go through the parable of the tenants, but basically he describes it perfectly there. That is our purpose here. Our purpose here, and he wants us. He's made it so easy for us compared to the way it was. The old law was tough. No one could do it. That's why I had to send Jesus. Make it easy. Just have faith. That's it. I'm not going to ask you to follow all these rules. I know you can't follow all these rules. It's hard to follow all these rules. Nobody can do it. Jesus was the only one who could do it. But, all right, you can't follow the rules. Cool. Then all you need to do is just believe and build your faith and have faith in Jesus. If you can do that, then you're in. And that's what it takes. So he's made it easier. It used to be much more difficult. Made it much easier. But we still have to do it. We still have to believe and ultimately have faith. And I wonder if you've ever wondered what the purpose of life is. And I feel like every time I thought about something like this, because I've thought about this for 25 years, every time I thought about this, it was God tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about this? How often do you think about the purpose of life? I think every time that you have that thought, the manifestation of that thought comes from the Lord, and he wants you to be thinking about it. He wants you to question it. He wants you to look for answers. He chased me down for 25 years. And ultimately, as much of a skeptic as I am, it took the historicity of the Bible, particularly the New Testament, tremendous amount of archaeological and historical evidence. I didn't have faith. I didn't. But he left those breadcrumbs there for people like me, people who are skeptics, people who just can't just have faith, people who need to see evidence. You see, the disciples got to see a lot more evidence than we ever will. Faith is more important for us than it even was for them. They got to see it. They witnessed it. They saw the resurrected Jesus. That's why they transformed. We didn't get to see that, so we have to focus on faith, and that is the reason why I am doing the Page Church of Faith, because I want to bring that faith back. Trust in God. That's what we really, really need in this world, I think. And I have one more note. The gospel is good news, but the great news is, once you've realized the purpose of life, why we're here. We're here to make it through the mail sort, right? We're here to make it through this judgment. And what we need to do in order to do that isn't difficult, but you still have to do it. Just because something's not difficult doesn't mean that you're going to do it. Drinking 8 glasses of water a day is not difficult, but do we do it? Going to the gym every day is not difficult, but do we do it? So there's lots of things we know that are good for us, but do we do it? And so it's not just enough to say, you know what, I believe him, he's right. I do believe in God. God, yep. That's not good enough. He wants you to have faith in him, which means he wants you to trust him. When he sends you a challenge, when he sends you a difficult situation, when he sends you an antagonist, a person who drives you nuts, that's the best chance for you to show faith. When you are all sorts of flustered because you're late, or you have too much to do and there's not enough time, all those things. Any time that you let yourself get away from your faith, you will start to feel things like anxiety, anger, worry. Anytime you start to experience those things, just know it's only a departure from your faith that can allow that to exist. So reach back and grab your faith and bring it back in. and trust in God, and you'll see such a big difference there. So once you understand why we're here, you can more easily surrender to God, which is ultimately where faith and trust come from. You have to surrender and say, you know what? It's yours. We talked about Carrie Underwood, Jesus Take the Wheel. She's saying, all right, it's yours. Go ahead. This is not my life. This is not my bank account. This is not my car. These are not my children. These are your children. And know that. The children that you claim to be yours, those are God's children. We all are. And if you see every person that you see and you recognize that is God's child, think about how differently you would treat people if you could see them that way. Every single person, that's God's child. How would you treat God's child? And so once we surrender, it's easier to let him lead our life and essentially enjoy the journey of the ups and downs, knowing who's in control and knowing that challenges that are provided to you are gifts so that you can grow your faith and so that you can see where you're at. Because God knows where you're at. But a lot of times we think we're more faithful than we really are. We think we're full of faith because we go to church, we shout it out. But when a challenge comes, all of a sudden we're riddled with worry. Let that go and let the faith come in. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you think this is cool, drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And if you really think this is awesome, then share it with your friends, and let's get the Word of God into as many people's hands as possible, and let everyone know that this isn't tough stuff. It's really not complicated. We've been given an amazing gift, the ability to access God's righteousness just through faith alone, without having to necessarily do anything else. That is it. That's all that He's asked of us. And once you do that, you won't need to have any moral truths. You won't need to have any rules or boundaries. Because when you have faith in God, you don't need someone to tell you don't do this or don't do that. You'll do the right thing automatically, and that's why He's given that to us as our gift. And I hope that as many people as possible can realize that in this life here. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate your time on a Sunday night, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks a lot.